There's a moment most people don't talk about. It doesn't look dramatic, there's no music, no big event, it's quiet. It's that moment late at night when everything slows down. You're not distracted anymore, no notifications, no conversations, no noise, just you. And suddenly you feel it, that space, that emptiness, and your mind starts asking questions you've been avoiding. Why do I feel like this? Why does everyone else seem okay? Why do I feel alone when I'm around people? And the instinct is immediate. You reach for your phone, you open something, you distract yourself. Because sitting in that feeling, it's uncomfortable. We've been conditioned to believe something very specific, that being alone means something is wrong, that if you don't have constant connection, constant attention, constant validation, you're missing out, that you're behind. But what if that belief itself is the problem? What if being alone isn't something to escape, but something to understand? Because here's what most people never realize. The moment you become comfortable being alone, you become very difficult to control. And today we're not talking about isolation. We're not talking about shutting people out. We're talking about something deeper, detachment. The ability to exist without constantly needing reassurance from the outside world. Because once you develop that, everything changes. The way you think, the way you move, the way people treat you. Part 1: The Validation Trap. Let's be honest about something most people won't say out loud. A lot of what we do is not driven by purpose, it's driven by perception. How we're seen, how we're judged, how we're received. You say yes, not because you want to, but because you don't want to seem difficult. You reply instantly, not because it matters, but because you don't want to seem uninterested. You explain yourself over and over because you need to be understood. And over time, this becomes automatic. You stop asking yourself what you want and start asking yourself what will be accepted. I remember a phrase where I thought being available was a strength. Always replying, always showing up, always being there. It made me feel reliable, needed, important. But what I didn't realize was this: I was not being respected. I was being used, not in a malicious way, but in a predictable way. Because when you're always available, people stop valuing your time. When you always say yes, your boundaries disappear. And when your boundaries disappear, so does your sense of control. And that's the trap right there. Validation feels good in the moment, but it slowly weakens your independence. Because now your emotional state depends on something external, a message, a reaction, a response. And when that doesn't come, you feel it. Not just disappointment, but instability. And that's when you realize something important. You are not in control of your emotions anymore. They are. Part 2: The Weight of Attachment. Attachment doesn't start as a problem, it starts as a connection. You care about someone, you invest time, energy, attention, and that's natural. But over time, something subtle happens. Expectations begin to form. You expect consistency, you expect effort, you expect reciprocity. And when those expectations aren't met, your mind reacts. You start overanalyzing small things. Why did they respond like that? Why are they distant? Did I do something wrong? And suddenly your peace is no longer internal. It's conditional, dependent, tied to something you cannot control. I've seen this happen not just in relationships, but in goals. You attach yourself to outcomes. You expect results quickly. You expect progress to look a certain way. And when it doesn't, frustration builds, doubt creeps in, motivation drops, because you weren't just working towards something. You were depending on it. That's the problem with attachment. It ties your identity to outcomes. So when things go wrong, it feels personal. Detachment breaks that link. It allows you to care without depending, to invest without losing yourself, to move forward without being controlled by the result. And that's a completely different way of living. Part 3: The practice of detachment. Detachment sounds simple, but in practice, it's one of the hardest things to build because it goes against your instincts. Think about it. Your mind wants certainty, connection, reassurance. Detachment removes that, at least in the beginning. But this is where real growth happens. Let's break this into something more practical for you to understand. 1. You learn to sit with discomfort. Most people escape discomfort immediately. They distract themselves, they avoid silence, but detachment requires you to stay, to sit in that empty space without reacting. At first, it feels wrong, like something is missing, but over time, you realize nothing is missing. You're just not used to being with yourself. 2. You reduce external noise. Think about how often your attention is pulled away. Notifications, messages, social media. Every time you check, you're seeking something: a reaction, a connection, a like, a hit of validation. Detachment starts when you reduce that noise, not completely, but intentionally. You stop consuming constantly, you create space. In that space, your mind starts to settle. 3. You build internal structure. When you're detached, you stop relying on motivation because motivation is unstable. It changes based on how you feel. Discipline doesn't. You build routines not because you're inspired, but because you've decided who you want to become. And that decision doesn't change daily. This is where your identity shifts from reactive to intentional. 4. You focus deeply. When your attention isn't scattered, it becomes powerful. You can sit with one task, one goal, one idea, one focus, and actually make progress. This is rare, by the way. Most people are distracted constantly. So even average focus puts you ahead. And that's what detachment gives you: clarity. Part 4: The identity shift. There's a moment in this process where things start to feel different. You don't check your phone as often. You don't feel the urge to respond immediately. You don't take everything personally. And it's subtle, but powerful. Because now, my friend, you're not reacting. You're choosing. Choosing what matters. Choosing what deserves your energy. Choosing what you engage with. And that changes how people see you. You become less predictable, less available, more grounded, and ironically, more respected. Because people can sense when you don't need them, not in an arrogant, egotistic way, but in a stable way. And that stability, that's rare. Let's wrap this up. Most people are afraid of being alone, so they fill every gap, every silence, every moment. But in doing that, they never actually meet themselves. They never build independence. They never develop control. Detachment changes that. It forces you to face yourself, to understand yourself, to build yourself. And once you do, you stop chasing, you stop depending, you stop reacting, and you start living differently, with clarity, with control, with purpose. So let me leave you with this. The strongest person in the room is the one who doesn't need the room at all.